Well, hello, fellow inmates. I hope that all of you are doing well, that you're safe, healthy, and as happy as possible in this situation. I have to say that one of my most favorite things that's come out of this whole COVID shutdown are the hilarious memes that have been going around. You know, all of the different jokes that people are coming up with, and just seeing people's creativity in the songs that they're making up, and all of that. And I love people bringing a lighter side to something that's really been incredibly heavy. So this week, I wanted to go over the more obvious triggers of COVID. And the top one to me is overwhelm. And so, a lot of people think that they need to get very specific with what they're working on. But most of the time, it's really hard to get to what is that specific thing that's triggering me when there's a massive amount of different things triggering you. So when you feel like the whole world is caving in on you and you've got bills to pay and you've got the kids to take care of and you need to get dinner ready and you don't know where your next paycheck is coming from, or you don't know if a family member is going to get sick or if you're going to get sick, or just like when there's a billion things coming at you, or you're watching the news a lot and it's just all this information coming in or all this misinformation coming in. You just don't know where to look next or what to believe or any of that. You can use the PS Tech Click Track to basically freak out about all of it. And doing that will help you come down about how overwhelmed you are, how exhausted you are, how confused you are by everything, and help you to get really clear on what the next most important thing to either clear is, like what is your big trigger in all of this. That can help you get really clear on that. But it can also help you to prioritize better and help you figure out, like, what is the next action I need to take? What is the next chore I need to get done? What is the next thing I need to do to get where I want to be or to feel how I want to feel? So doing a round where you just freak out about how overwhelmed you're feeling and be like, I have to get this done and this done and this done and this done and this done. Or I've got all these pieces of information or all these different worries kind of coming at me. And, I'm afraid I'm going to get sick. I'm afraid a family member is going to get sick. I'm afraid that this person's going to die. I'm afraid that somebody's going to cough in my face at the grocery store. I'm afraid that, I'm going to lose my job. And so you just kind of like freak out about all of those different things and basically then feel at peace about it. It's not going to make you complacent about any of those things. It's not going to make you suddenly think, oh, those are positive things, I welcome that. It's going to make you see it more clearly, more logically, more groundedly, and be able to take the actions you need to take, because now the fight or flight response is removed from each of those individual things, and especially your sense of overwhelm about all of it at once. And then sometimes you'll find that while you're doing that overwhelm round, something keeps coming up over and over and over again. So that's where okay, this is a big trigger for me. I need to do a whole separate round on this particular trigger. But then go back to just the sense of overwhelm for the rest of the round you're already doing about all the stuff that's overwhelming you. And then do a separate round on whatever it is that's actually triggering you in the biggest way. And remember, the big key to get permanent clearance and to avoid future triggering of similar things is to look at, when have I felt similarly to this thing that's triggering me right now? So, if it's a fear of losing a loved one, then when have you lost loved ones in the past? That could be pets, that could be grandparents, whatever. And so you kind of want to not only be afraid of what if I lose these people, but include other times that you've been through something similar. And that will help really clear it so that you can move through whatever it is that happens next. First of all, without worrying, but also without it being this huge emotional trigger that is big and scary and looming. So that's where the overwhelm rounds can really come in handy and be super comforting and really help you to prioritize. The next one is the loss of control. So just this sense of like, I can't control any of this. Like, I don't have control over whether I can go back to work. I don't have control over whether things are going to open up for the summer. I don't have control over whether I'll have a job at a certain time, or, you don't have control over anything. So that, to me, is the biggest lesson for all of us as humans right now. And I honestly feel like, on a higher level, a higher perspective, that's part of the reason that we're going through this right now collectively. I mean, the whole freaking planet is going through this right now. So clearly, this is a message that we as humanity kind of need, is to let go of that constant need to control everything, to push everything to go our way, and to expect things to be a certain way. It's time to let go of that. So it's really just, to me, the way that I would take care of that is to use the click track to freak out about not being able to control anything. And that trigger often does go back to childhood, where we as kids don't have sovereignty over our own lives, our own activities, our own actions, our own decisions, all of that. Like, most of the time, our parents make all of our decisions for us: where we're going to go, who we can talk to and who we can't, whether we have to hug somebody or not, what we're going to eat, so everything depends on our parents. And so we don't get to control just about anything as kids. And it's a very helpless, powerless feeling. And this situation right now with the COVID shutdown is bringing all of that back up again. Just this sense of like, I can't control anything. I don't get to choose. And that's a really helpless, powerless feeling. So that's really what we need to clear. And it may take you a few rounds to really get that down. And, just to remind you, anytime you're using the click track, it's a good idea to do as many rounds as you need to do to get it down to a 1 or a 0 as far as like how triggered you are when you think about that. So if that's a big trigger for you, and if you've just been stewing about that sense of not having control over anything, then that's absolutely something that you want to clear and keep going with until it's gone. That doesn't mean you need to do that all in one sitting. You can do a few rounds in a sitting, take a break, come back to it later, check in with yourself, be like, how triggered am I right now that I can't make any decisions for myself or decide what I want to do right now or whatever. And then just keep going till it's at a 1 or a 0. And then you'll have more permanent clearance on that so that it won't keep coming up for you. So the next one is loss of, well, really, it's more just like that sense of unknown. So we really literally can't make any kinds of plans right now. We can't plan to travel. We can't decide, like, when should I take off time this summer to be able to go play outside, because who knows when the shutdown is going to be over and when we're going to be allowed to go back out in public again and when it'll be safe to do so. So, and, beyond that point, there's going to be some economic fallout from this. There's going to be a lot of change societally from all of this. And so we don't know what the future holds over the next few years for us. So there's just this sense of not knowing what to plan for. We don't know what's coming. And we all, as humans, do have that fear of the unknown, that discomfort with just not knowing what's coming, what's around the corner, and that fear that the rug is going to be pulled out from under you. So, and that is another one that a lot of people mentioned as well, is just that feeling of having the rug pulled out from under us, which, has recently happened. We were just going along, doing our thing, and suddenly, like, yank, your whole sense of reality is disrupted. And all of that really kind of reckons back to me, to the fact that we as humans have had for generations, like our ancestors have been through the Great Depression, potato famine, slavery, the Holocaust, like, where people were just living their lives, doing just fine. And then suddenly the rug was pulled out from under them and their whole lives changed and all of their ancestors' lives changed as a result of their life changing, and um, or I mean, all of their descendants' lives changed as a result of it. So it really has these far-reaching effects when something this big is going on. And we already, before even this started to happen, like when I was working with people on any kind of like financial fears or anything like that, we've been focusing really hardcore on acknowledging our own fear, our own discomfort of like, what if the rug gets pulled out from under me financially, or what if this bad thing happens? And not only acknowledging your own history of lack with your finances, but also including the fact that your ancestors have been through those things I just mentioned: depression, potato famine, so on and so forth. So even if you don't have a logic conscious memory of the past examples and experiences of your ancestors, your parents, your grandparents, anything like that, you can logically say, like, yeah, I know that my great grandparents lived through the Great Depression, or I know that my parents didn't have a lot of money growing up. And so that programming gets inherited, it's in our DNA. And so that's something to acknowledge. Like when we're dealing with this unknown, uncertainty, um, not being able to plan anything, and feeling like the rug has been pulled out from under us, or that the rug is going to be pulled out from under us, we want to acknowledge all of that uncertainty, all of that fear, all of that unknown, and that sense of like, what if the rug gets pulled out from under me again? Or this feeling of having the rug just pulled out from under me recently is really freaking me out. It's bringing up that fight or flight response, which is completely understandable because we need money to survive. We need jobs to survive. That's just the nature of the culture that we've built. So, of course, that's a survival level need. And so we're going to be triggered by that. But you can bring it to a more manageable level where you're not having that physical fight or flight response to it, so that you can act appropriately to solve the problem and do whatever action you can do to actually fix it, instead of just sitting there in fight or flight mode and freaking out about it. So I would use the click track to have an all out fit or freak out about, I don't have enough money right now, or what if I don't have enough money soon? What if the economy collapses? What if I lose everything? Freak out about that, and then go into your own past experiences of lack or not knowing or bad things happening out of the blue and the rug being pulled out from under you, and whatever you know about your ancestors and whatever you can logically assume about your ancestors. And hey, just to throw this in there, if you're a past life believer, you happen to know or assume that there are some past lives where maybe you've taken a vow of poverty, or maybe you've really suffered with not having enough, or the rug was pulled out from under you during the Great Depression or something, then include that too. It can't hurt. Uh, Basically, it's just naming as many possible routes to that trigger as possible, so that you're applying your current fear and discomfort about it to all of those past experiences. And then your brain can disconnect that by virtue of using the click track to basically convince your subconscious mind that you're safe in the face of that perceived threat, and that allows you to kind of heal that in all of those different places, so that it's not as strong a trigger in the future. So that is a trickier one. I will say that the fear of the unknown, the fear of the rug being pulled out from under you, and most especially like financial fears and things, that is a very common trigger. And it's also one, because there are so many roots to it, and a lot of them have nothing to do with you physically, they can be kind of difficult to get rid of on a permanent basis. There are certain triggers that just clear, and once you get them at their root, they're just gone forever and they're never going to bother you again. I feel like sometimes, like financially and caring what other people think about you, those two can be a little bit more tricky as far as getting permanent clearance on them. So for me, it's more a matter of like, I, work on it, I get it down to what feels like a 1 or a 0, but really I kind of stay at a baseline for the most part of like that being maybe a 30, or let's say a 3 out of 10. So if, a 10 is like an end of the world trigger, now for me, those kinds of things go up to maybe a 3 out of 10, where before they were maybe a 9 out of 10. So it's huge progress and it feels better, but there are just a couple of things that you just have to keep plugging away at. I mean, for the most part, you can clear a lot of things on a permanent basis and get really good relief from it. Just there's a couple of things that are really tricky just because they come from so many different roots that it can be difficult to get at every single root and really get it cleared. But for what that's worth, that's how I would take care of that particular trigger, is just combining all of those different things into the same round where you're freaking out about that. Now, the next one is really a sense of grief. I mean, we're all just kind of grieving our normal day-to-day way of life. We're grieving the fact that we don't have any time to ourselves, or we're grieving the fact that we're all alone, or we're grieving the fact that we've lost our jobs, or we're grieving loved ones that have passed because of this, or there's any number of things that we're grieving, but essentially overall it's just grief over our way of life. Like, we were living a certain way, and like I said, the rug got pulled out from under us. And so there is that sense, we all went through those stages of denial and anger and sadness and fear, and those are all parts of going through the grieving process. So it makes sense that, you feel like you might be grieving. So with grief can be another tricky one just because there are those different stages. And so you kind of have to use the click track on each individual stage. So you can't just use it on grief alone. You have to use it on the anger, on the denial of like, this can't be happening, and have an angry fit about it, and feel your sadness about it. Lament the loss of what was normal to you, and just kind of keep chipping away at the different things as they come up. And if you've had a history of similar things happening to you, include those in there. If not, then just lament or have an angry fit or whatever about the isolated situation right now. But you will get better results if you also include other times where you have felt similarly or had similar experiences. Now, there is just this sense of fear of future fallout, definitely with financial stuff, but the education system is likely to change as a result of this. The medical system is likely to change as a result of this. The government's likely to change as a result of this. Who knows? There might be a revolution. There might be a Great Depression. We don't know. And so it's really paying attention to what are you most afraid of? What are you worried might happen? And freak out about that. Very similarly to the fear of the rug being pulled out from under you. So looking at like, whatever it is you're afraid of, freaking out about that, but also including times that you or your ancestors or the culture has been through similar things like that, and just include those in that round where you're freaking out about what if that happens. The other thing, and this kind of goes with the grief, somebody specific mentioned having like these exhausting mood shifts from like being hyper anxious and just really watchful and being like, what's going to happen next? And just being like hyper vigilant. And then flipping over into numbness and depression and exhaustion and all of that. So it really makes total sense to what we're doing and what we're processing. And especially if you're watching the news a lot, you're going to be freaking out. If you're on social media all the time and seeing everybody else complaining, freaking out, worrying, if you're watching the news, they're really, they're paid to freak us the hell out. And so they're really good at it. And certain networks make things up out of the clear blue sky. So you don't even know whether they're telling the truth or not. It's just ridiculous. So, first of all, turn off the news, or at least look for a neutral news source that isn't, trying to pander to one side or the other. And um, just really start to trust yourself and pay attention to yourself and look at what are the things that are freaking me out right now? What am I most worried about? And clearing those particular things. Um, it's very common for someone to become numb or depressed as a result of being in that constant hypervigilant state or that highly anxious state. It's usually where depression comes from. We're on that hamster wheel of what if this happens? What if that happens? Why did this have to happen? I'm freaking out. So your adrenals are just pumping out all the stress chemicals. At some point, they get kind of worn out and they run out of stock. And so then you've got nothing. And then you're just flatline and you feel like, I don't have any motivation to do anything. Ugh. And you just get stuck in that for a while until your supplies come back up, and then you start freaking out about something. You get back on the hamster wheel and you're freaking out and having all those stress chemicals again, and then eventually you get worn out again. So it's very common, very likely to cycle through all of that. So the best way to avoid that is when you find yourself freaking out about something, freak out while you do the click track. It'll help convince your subconscious mind that you're safe. It'll help you to get clear on what you can do to deal with it, even if that's just turning off the news and stop making yourself feel helpless about not being able to have an effect on what the government's doing or what the virus is doing. Then, do what you have to do to get yourself out of that. Because if you can't do anything about the situation, you've got to stop swimming in it. It doesn't make any sense to obsess about something you can't do anything about. And so the news just makes you feel helpless, and thinking constantly about like what the government is doing and how things are being mishandled and am I going to get sick and all of that kind of stuff. You can't do anything about it. So why are you focusing so heavily on it? It doesn't make any sense. You're just wearing yourself out. So click track it, get to a place where you can either take action and decide to take action, but take it from a calm, grounded, logical place, or just be at peace with the fact that you can't take any action. And that's really the name of the game, because it doesn't do anybody any good for you to be really in a place of extreme worry or fear or any of that. So that's really the best way to avoid that roller coaster, is to deal with that fear and that discomfort on the subconscious level so that you can be at peace about it and do what you need to do to get back on track. Similarly, some people are saying that now that they've been inside for so long, they're kind of afraid or nervous to go back outside. And for some people, that's a fear of like, okay, what if I go outside and COVID isn't completely gone? So, there's germs everywhere and I'm going to get sick or get somebody I care about sick. And so, there's the fear of that. But there's also the fear of going back out amongst the humans. And that really is more of an individual kind of trigger. It's kind of a sense of like, what are you most worried about with humans? Is it that they're going to be rude? Is it that they're going to be judgmental? Is it that you're being careful and they're not? So that's really a matter of like your own perspective and your own worries. And it's been, for some people, a huge relief to not have to be with other people for a while, because it gives you a break of feeling judged. It gives you a break from having to deal with the drama of other people's stuff. It's given you a break from taking on other people's stuff. So it makes sense that you might be kind of nervous or resistant to going back out in the world and going back to normal, just because it's kind of a relief sometimes, because people sure are peoply and it's peoply out there. So I go around a lot going, oh, humans. It's just the way things are. So how you can get some relief from that. I mean, really, it's just pay attention to what it is that's bothering you the most about that idea. So if it's the fear that you're going to get sick when you go back out there, well, click track that and then just do the best you can. Continue to wear gloves or sanitize your hands or wash your hands a lot or wear a mask or stay as far from other people as you possibly can as you go forward. Like, just do what you know will be the best way to protect yourself, and keep going with that until things normalize. Um, but also click track your fear that you're going to get COVID again, or that, germs are all over everything, and all of that. And then what that way you can do those healthy behaviors and take those preventative measures and take proper precautions without it being about fear, with it being much more about just prevention and having caution, but you don't have to have fear to take proper precautions. So just, differentiating between those two things. Fear and anxiety and worry don't protect you from anything. Caution and proper precaution do help protect you. So remove the fear and then take the action that you need to take. So that's it for as far as the fear of like going back out and getting in contact with it and things like that. But with it being more about not wanting to interact with humans, I understand, but it's more about like, what are your insecurities with that, or what bothers you most about that? Is it their ignorance? Is it their rudeness? Is it, um, it, you know, like, is it the fear that they're going to judge you or treat you a certain way? So I don't know what that trigger is for you, but most of the time, most of the people who have mentioned this to me, it's because they already had a sense that they were being judged and that other people were judging them harshly. And most of the time, it's because you're judging yourself most harshly, and because your family of origin also probably judged you quite harshly, or you had a lot of bullying as a kid growing up. So, the best way to clear that is to continue working on the fear of, okay, if I go back out there, then my boss is going to be judgmental of me, or people at the store are going to be judgmental of me, or, I'm going to have this kind of interaction with someone, and just freak out about that possibility, play out the worst case scenarios in your head, and then just include all the times where something similar has happened to you. And it doesn't have to be every single time, but the pivotal times, the times that really stick out to you, or just the fact that it just keeps happening to you, and how effing tired you are of that continually happening to you throughout the course of of your life. And what if that happens again? And just freaking out about all of that mixed together in the same round will help take that down considerably, so that you can go back out without so much fear of judgment or so much of an emotional charge reacting to people's judgment of you. And incidentally, the more you clear that, the less likely people are to be judgy of you, and the less likely you are to expect it and perceive that it's happening when it's not. So it's all very helpful to clear that. Something else I wanted to mention with the fear of getting sick. There's, some things that I've been doing specifically to protect myself and keep myself healthy. Of course, like I mentioned, just clearing any fear that I have of getting sick or getting anyone I care about sick. But beyond that, when I go out in the world, like if I go grocery shopping, that day I make sure to either give myself 20 minutes of Reiki or click track the feeling that I'm going to get sick. And just doing that really helps to prevent future illness. And then let's say I don't do the 20 minutes of Reiki that day. If I start to feel like I'm coming down with something, so if I start to get like swollen glands and, like I'm not quite sick yet, but I know it's coming, I will either give myself an hour of Reiki throughout the day. So it can be all at once, or it could be like 3 20-minute times or whatever time you have possible to you. And then the other thing you could do is do 2 or 3 rounds of the click track over the course of that day where you just feel those symptoms and complain about possibly getting sick. So those are some ways that, like, if I feel like I'm coming down with something, but I'm not quite sick yet, those are great ways to prevent. Another thing is that I have created a hypnosis recording that I'm giving for free right now on my website. So the link to that will be in the description to the show. But it's immune system boosting hypnosis. So it's a guided meditation and hypnosis track that helps to help you to boost your immune system by convincing your subconscious mind that you are healthy and your immune system is powerful and that you can fight anything off. And so that's another way that you can go about healing this and preventing future illness and dealing with things as they come up. I have also I wanted to mention this because it's something I recently noticed. A lot of times I will feel emotionally kind of meh or dull the day before I start to feel symptoms of coming down with something. So I'm now paying attention and watching for that and making sure that I do either some energy work or Reiki or do a click track on that day about, oh, I feel kind of emotionally low. That probably means I'm going to get sick. So I just send myself immune system boosting Reiki or perfect health Reiki, or I will click track my mood and the fact that I'll probably be getting sick soon and just kind of click tracking that. And that helps to prevent as well. So there's kind of all these stages where you can sort of nip it in the bud before it really has a chance to take hold. And that is a great way to prevent the actual, like, full on illness. Because once you're actually sick, those tools can work to sort of take down the symptoms a little bit, but they're not actually going to just remove the illness. They can help you heal faster. They can help you to feel a little better, but prevention is key. So catching it as early as possible. So, the day you shop or the day you're in contact with other people, do some energy work or some PS Tech or something, or the hypnosis track, just to prevent. And then if you start to feel like you're coming down with something, then definitely do some energy work on that or do some click tracking on that just to help prevent it. Because if you can convince your subconscious mind that you are healthy, then you become healthy. Your body and brain kind of work together in that way. So that's really what that's all about. So I wanted to mention that. Just to have that in the back of your mind as you move forward with all of this, like, whether it's about COVID or not, like, nobody even wants to get a cold. So being able to prevent colds to me is priceless. So that's, something to keep in mind. Okay. So for all you empaths out there, this is a really tough time because there's a lot of people struggling right now. And as empaths, we tend to care a lot about what other people are going through. And so consciously, you may be just thinking like, oh my gosh, all these people lost their jobs, or oh my gosh, all these people lost loved ones, or oh, all these people are sick and suffering in the hospital by themselves. And so you've got the conscious version of an empath who's just worrying for other people. And then you've also just got people who are feeling down and not knowing why, like feeling afraid or feeling angry or feeling just off in some way that doesn't make sense to their own situation. And that's because they're kind of just energetically tuning into the collective experience, and that collective experience is reporting back to them. Ugh. So the best thing that you can do is just use the click track while you worry for other people or while you feel those feelings that don't make any sense to you. So that's one option. Also, another thing that I like to do is energetically, we as empaths are tuning in. So most empaths think that it's other people putting stuff on them or that they're helplessly picking up on what's going on around them. But in actuality, it's us tuning in to what's going on out there. So it's us tuning into another person, or it's us tuning into the collective experience. So I picture my energy field either like an octopus with all these little tentacles kind of reaching out and checking into things, or like a fog that's sort of sifted outward and is just checking around and all of the stuff everywhere. So I just picture pulling that in. So if it's an octopus, I pull in the tentacles, or if it's a fog, I suck that fog back in so that it's more in my own energy field, my own zone. So it's within a couple of feet of me, and I'm no longer tuning into what's going on out there right now. And if that doesn't quite do it, if you don't notice an immediate shift when you do that, then sometimes I'll picture like this tube or turbine of blades around me, kind of cutting ties with everything, so that, you know, like almost like a beam me up, Scotty kind of thing, where the tube comes down around me and then it just slices all the different connections to all the stuff out there, so that I'm not tuning into 50 different radio stations, so that it's just me and my energy. I feel into what my energy is feeling and what I'm tuning into right now, and just trying to stay just me. So that's another way to go about it. And a more advanced version of this, and I'm just kind of pondering how deeply to go into this, but I can I can include the information on how to listen to some meditations that will help you become an air purifier for negative energy. So rather than tuning it out, rather than having to energetically mind your own business, you can actually just become this air purifier for whatever energy you encounter. Sort of like how, you know, we breathe out, and to us, what we breathe out is toxic, but the trees take that in and turn it into oxygen, and they're not depleted by that. Just like we're not depleted by breathing in the oxygen that they put out and then breathing back out ourselves. And so there's a sense of being able to do that on an energetic level, and there's no depletion. Where a lot of times when you're an empath and you're feeling other people's stuff, you feel depleted by it. And so you feel like having to fix that for someone would also be depleting. But when you kind of turn on your own natural, innate sense of being a purifier for the energy, it actually boosts you, and it boosts anyone or anything around you as well. So you don't get depleted by that. So from my book, Less Logic, More Wisdom, Surviving the Shift with Your Sanity Intact, there is a bunch of guided meditations and stuff that come with that book. So the digital bonus materials for that book, which are free on my website. So if you go to apriladams.org, and I think it's the book bonuses tab, you can find those meditations. So in the digital bonus materials for Less Logic, More Wisdom, I believe it's meditations number 9 and 10, where number 9 will show you how to activate your own inner spark, your own divine spark, to reconnect with your highest, truest self, and noticing that that lives just below your heart, that there's a divine spark there, and to be able to kind of activate that into this Merkaba. So a Merkaba is a 6-pointed star with a circle around it, like a ball around it. And it's 3D. So it's not like flat, like a, you know, flat drawing of a 6-pointed star. It's sort of like 3D. So like it turns into this ball, and it begins to expand out, 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 until it's like this giant ball surrounding you. And then number 10 is the energy filtration meditation that shows you how to then use that as a way to process negative energy. So those are there, and I will include the information for that in the information for this show as well, if you want to check that out. So that's a few different ways that you can deal with that. So you can click track the feelings you're picking up for others, or the worries you have for others. You can energetically mind your own business, or you can energetically kind of become an air purifier for it. So that's all very helpful. And also a lot of times, like when you're really kind of tuning in that way and you're getting rid of your triggeredness and fear around that, you think of ways that you can actually make a difference and take physical action to help people who are in need. So it may help to inspire you to do something to help instead of just sitting there in your worry and discomfort. So that's huge. All right. So the last one that I wanted to bring up is comfort eating and weight gain. So everyone's joking about the COVID-19 that we're all going to be 19 pounds heavier when we move through this, when we finish with this lockdown that we're having. And I can totally understand that. I mean, anytime you're going through any sort of emotional turmoil, we go to whatever coping mechanisms that we have created for ourselves. And in our culture, food is a major source of comfort. And if you think about like when you're a kid, you celebrate with food, you're rewarded with food, you are comforted with food, and love is expressed through food. And so there's just and it's one of the most acceptable ways to comfort yourself. I mean, there's a whole group of food called comfort foods. So there's no surprise that when we're grieving, when we're afraid, when we're feeling stressed or depressed or any of that, that a lot of us would go to food or alcohol or, whatever our normal coping mechanisms are to be able to escape those feelings, even for 5 or 10 minutes. And then we end up gaining some weight. So I wanted to kind of share some information about what you can do to deal with both specific food cravings as well as when you have a tendency to go to a particular behavior or to go to eating to avoid certain feelings. So first of all, like when you crave certain foods, typically what's actually happening is you're trying to bring back the feeling that you used to have when you bonded with someone over this food or you had some positive experiences around that food. You're actually trying to unconsciously bring up the feelings that sharing that food with someone in the past has brought up for you, or um, in the example of like cigarettes, this is a really odd version of what I'm talking about, but it's just so fascinating. So I was working with somebody and doing an exercise that helps to figure out like what the root of specific cravings are. And normally it's for food, but we used it for cigarettes. And it turned out that when she was 14, the first person who ever paid her any positive attention was smoking with her. And I mean, later they turned out to be an abuser, but at that time, the cigarettes made her feel cool. And it was specifically attached to the attention she was getting from this person. And so when she smoked, she was trying to bring those feelings back up. And so we did some clearing work on that. But anytime you are really, really, really craving a particular kind of food or a very specific food, normally that's what's going on. You're trying to bring back the feeling of however you first felt when you really fell in love with that food. And normally that's bonding with family members over that food and their love for that food, or a particular circumstance like having pizza with your family every Friday night, or being rewarded with a certain kind of ice cream if you got good grades, or, anything like that. So you can use the click track to, and I know I sound like a broken record talking about the click track all the time, but it's a damn miracle. So um, using the click track to, first of all, just imagine your love for that food, how much you love that food, how it tastes, how it smells, how it feels in your mouth. Um, If it's a texture thing, if it's bread, you can, or cheese or whatever, you can kind of like picture like pulling on it and squishing it with your fingers, with your mouth, like whatever it is that you love about that food. So really get into that. And then also, if you have like really positive memories associated with that food, you can throw those in there a little bit with it too. Like, you know, just the feeling of this reminds me of these particular moments, but really primarily focusing on your love for that food, and it'll make it more of a neutral for you. This is one of those that you'll probably have to do maybe every 6 months if you continue to experience that food. Like I've done it with bread, and bread became very neutral for me, but it's still part of most, you know, holidays and celebrations and things like that. And so you can like reprogram yourself to love bread again. And so then maybe 6 months later or a year later, you might need to do another round of loving bread in order to release that that attachment to the bread again, or the cravings for the bread again. But it's pretty amazing to have something that you've like craved and loved and just been helpless against to just become neutral to you. So that's something you can do for specific cravings. But if you have a tendency to use food to avoid feeling a certain way. Let's say you're feeling stressed at the end of the day, or you're feeling bored, or you're feeling lonely, and you're not hungry, but you're wandering around in your kitchen going, oh, what can I eat? I need to eat something. I know I'm not hungry, and I know I shouldn't be eating anything right now, but I need something. I need to eat. So when you're doing that, or, you know, it can be other things too. It could be, I need to get on social media. It can be, I need to shop. It could be, I need to gamble. It can be, I need to look at porn. It's just like, what do you do to avoid your feelings? But, you know, since we're talking about weight gain, comfort food, things like that, it's a good place to start. I do have an exercise that I will share in the comments to the show, but essentially what it does is it walks you through feeling the feeling that you're having at the moment that you're trying to avoid, imagining finding a food that you're going to eat and then pushing it away and feeling how that feels, that you have a feeling and you're not going to let yourself stuff it down. And then you let your subconscious bring you back to the very first time you ever felt that way. So the first time you ever had that emotion, but nobody was helping you deal with it. So you didn't know what to do with it. And so, you know, the tendency was to eventually try to stuff that down because it was so uncomfortable and no one was teaching you how to deal with your emotions in a healthy way. So you go back to that moment and you heal the inner child version of you from that particular time, that particular original situation, which helps you to be able to better process when you have those feelings come up in the present, and to not need to feed yourself to avoid that emotion or to fill that hole or that void from that time that, you know, you had that wounding as an inner child. So that particular exercise to me is a fantastic way. If you don't know what the root of something is, it helps you to find, like, here's the root of why I react that way. Here's the root to that particular trigger or feeling. And then you can plug whatever comes up in that particular exercise into the click track to get permanent clearance on it as well. So I do like to do that too. But it can help you feel better in the moment to do that exercise by itself too. So I will also include the link to that particular exercise, the emotional eating exercise, in the comments or the description to the show as well. So that's pretty much it. That's the triggers that everyone brought up when I asked on social media what everyone's triggers were. And I just want to remind you guys, like, I'm not here to validate your triggers or invalidate your triggers. This is really just about getting you relief and helping you to feel better day to day and to be able to take action on the things you need to take action on without being like weighed down by fear and heavy emotions and blocking yourself. So that's what this is all about. And that's what I'm here to do, is to help you figure that out and get there. So until next time, I look forward to our next time together. And I hope that you are all doing well with COVID.